Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Lyrlian for ESFI World, bringing you a recap of the GSL Code S semifinals and finals. The semifinals started with a 3-0 sweep of Alive by Genius. Genius's unit control and decision making were just too much for the usually solid Terran player to handle. The first game was by far the longest of the series. Both players got up to 4 bases. By the end, Alive was macroing out of 22 barracks. However, Alive's unit composition was not what he needed to beat Genius's maxed army. Alive had too many Marauders, too many Vikings, but not enough Marines or Medevacs. As a result, Genius's 3-3-2 Zealot Templar army massacred Alive's in the final battle. Genius took us back to GSL Open Seasons in the second game. He proxied a Stargate for a 3-gate Void Ray rush off of one base. Alive scouted it, but due to Genius' perfect micro, all 3 Void Rays managed to charge up to a maximum damage dealing potential. Genius used the Void Rays to kill both of Alive's bunkers after losing his defensive structures. Alive, who had gambled on an early expansion, was forced to concede. It was Alive's turn to get aggressive in the final game. He tried for a 2-base Marine tank push meant to put Genius off balance, but Genius stalled the push with sentries and bought himself plenty of time to get out 2 Immortals and 2 Colossi. When Alive's army finally got to his base, Genius again showed exceptional unit control, breaking the contain with minimal losses. Genius decided to counterattack as soon as Thermal Lance finished up. His robo units had little problem killing the defensive tanks that Alive had continued making. Alive GG'd, sending Genius to his first ever GSL finals. Among the roars of the Korean crowd, DRG and GuMiho began their best of 5 series to determine who would join Genius in the GSL finals. Despite DRG being a heavy favorite, winning 89% of the fan votes, GuMiho was able to take an early 2-game lead. In Game 1, the Towel Terran was able to keep DRG on the defensive for most of the game with constant drops, pressure, and a brilliant base defense just in time to stop Muta harass. GuMiho was able to hold against a devastating Roach push in Game 2 and fight back with strong drop pressure, sniping vital structures and distracting DRG. Eventually, he was able to outmicro DRG and amass an overwhelming force, utilizing multi-pronged attacks and Medevac micro to make the most out of his dwindling force and secure a 2-0 lead. The third game of the series was much more macro oriented, with DRG playing fairly defensive until he could get out Broodlords, and GuMiho attempting to punish him with heavy drops. DRG was able to fend off the harass and despite heavy losses, was able to fight into GuMiho's natural and take his first win of the series. DRG was able to tie up the series in Game 4 with constant Ling run-bys, strong defense and drop awareness that gave him a huge lead, eventually dealing the finishing blow with infested Terrans and Speedlings to bring us to the ace match. The final match began with DRG scouting GuMiho, opening the same way as he did in Game 4 and reacting with spines for defense. DRG sees a weakness and attempts to Roach Ling a Baneling push, killing all of the siege tanks and most of the SCVs and Marines and takes a 30 supply lead. GuMiho attempts to fight back with more drops, but DRG overwhelms him with Mutalisk, Zergling and Baneling to secure the victory, an astonishing comeback from being down 2-0. In the first final since GSL made to not have a Terran, DongRaeGu and teammate Genius will be facing off in an all-MVP finals, pitting one of the best Protoss in the world against arguably the best Zerg in the world. Moving on into the finals match. The battle of the two friends began with some light smack talk, each player saying they could take the series 4-0 but would give the other a few games to make it interesting. Genius, stating he was confident after beating DRG 2-0 in the round of 32, took Game 1 of the series with a standard Stargate opening, using the Void Ray for map control and eventually moving in with a flock of Phoenix to do some damage and caused DRG to push out with Roaches a little too early. Genius' great control caused DRG to lose most of his army, his 4th base, and eventually the game. After his first victory, Genius went for a very risky double proxy Stargate opening, even skipping on Warpgate research. Due to some indecision from the Protoss, DRG was able to defend with Spores, Queens and Hydras and push back against the stiff old army of Genius. While Genius was stuck in base, DRG was able to max out and kill the Protoss Nexus, earning the Zerg victory for Game 2. In Game 3, Genius attempts some very clever mind games, intentionally showing DRG all information, causing him to read it as a much more passive strategy. When Genius pushed out with a huge army of Blink Stalkers, DongRaeGu was totally caught off guard, losing his army and his expansion and surrendering to his devious teammate. In Game 4, Genius continued to demonstrate his love for Stargate openings as he went for another double Stargate opening, but this time around, he made the questionable decision of going for carriers. DRG went for Roach Hydra drops and hit Genius' third base when most of his army supply was spent on carriers. Genius attempted to hold on, but DRG went to 5 base and overwhelmed the Protoss base with Links, Corruptors, and evened up the series at 2-2. After running to his teammate's booth, most likely to joke about how Genius went for carriers, DRG went for a double expand opening. His opponent again went for a Stargate build, which DRG attempted to break with the Roach Queen attack. The Zerg units were killed, but DRG was able to sneak some links into the main and snipe the Nexus. After some midfield aggression, the players went for a base trade, but Genius' indecisiveness was his demise, as he wasted a lot of time walking units across the map instead of killing structures or units. DRG took Game 5 and ran into Genius' booth, delivering some more smack talk and celebrating. Genius continued the trend of Stargate play in Game 6 and used his great Phoenix control to get an early advantage and deter DRG from going Mutas until later than usual and going Hydra instead. Genius then sniped the third base of DRG, keeping the game 2 base versus 2 base. Genius's mostly Stalker army attacked DRG's natural, but a wall of spine crawlers was enough to push the army back. DRG is able to retake his third and lay down some spines while also harassing the Protoss and killing a lot of probes. Genius decided he needed to push on the third and, despite his great blink micro, was not able to break it. Genius moved his army up into the third, but DRG's spine crawlers and small flock of mutas was enough to kill off the only remaining units and secure his 4th win and a GSL championship. That will do it for Season 1 of the GSL 2012. For more coverage and news around esports, find us on Twitter at ESFI and on the web at esfiworld.com. Until next time, this has been Lyrlian with ESFI World.